The idea for the installation Shrouded in Clouds and Letters initiated a few years ago when I made a smaller version with just one panel. Because of space limitations, I couldn't get the results that I wanted at that time, so it's a pleasure to see this installation as I had originally imagined. Tonight I'll be sharing with you my process, the ideas and research which inform the work leading us to talking about this installation. My process begins with an idea. The ideas mainly come from nature and memories. Oh, sure. I consider myself to be a multidisciplined conceptual artist. My practice initiates through materiality, which means that the materials that I choose are selected to articulate process, form, labor, and implication. I look for materials that can provide deeper context and layers of meaning. I'm interested in poetry and like the idea that my work is a sort of visual poetry. Meaning is revealed slowly and by thinking in poetic ways. My intention is for the narrative to gently wash over the viewer rather than a heavy downpour. Also, it's important to me to allow space for the viewer to take away personal meaning and multiple meanings and to not get in the way of the audience reading the work. I spend a lot of time thinking about material choices. And considering these materials are decided upon for feasibility and cost and installation feasibility. In beginning a project, the construction timeline is determined and I set deadlines for myself. For instance, the panels were made over 3 months and the beaded branches took over 6 months. The work is usually customized for the site, so I'll need specific details about the site like ceiling height, light process, and we'll bring assorted hardware and tools anticipating the on-site needs. It's important for me to incorporate my heritage into the work I make for 2 reasons. The importance of honoring ancestors and the importance of honoring old world traditions of handcraft. I'm inspired by memories wrapped around handcrafted objects made by my mother and grandparents. I feel strongly that my memories are shaped over time, and through my attachment to them, they are constructed and they become somewhat mythical. Other content that informs the work are personal loss and grief embedded in my heart, as well as longing and wonder. These are sensibilities that I strive to capture and portray in the work. I'm also weaving between personal and socio-political themes with a subtle hand, hoping for varied narratives to emerge and expand in nonlinear explorations. I'll now shift to talking about this piece. The personal narrative of this piece, Shrouded in Clouds and Letters, incorporates materials that connect me to memories about specific objects made by my grandparents. Those memories bring to light and confront my struggle of feeling a loss of heritage through my Americanized, fragmented identity. As most Americans have immigrant ancestry, landing here from another place, we are a bit like orphans. I read somewhere that our bones contain fragments of our ancestral homelands. So the saying, "I feel it in my bones," takes on a new profound meaning. The title, Shrouded in Clouds and Letters, symbolizes ancestry, heritage, and lineage. Clouds implies the heavens and a mystical realm, and by letters, I mean messages like whispers from a liminal space in which the spirits of my Italian ancestors speak to me and guide my practice. The word shroud and the use of muslin imply funerary ceremony and a veil or a cloak. The 4 textile panels installed from the ceiling measure nearly 4 feet by 11 feet long and are intended to divide the installation and represent a threshold. As the audience moves through the space and is immersed in or shrouded in the clouds of cast light on the other side. The audience's movement and interaction through the installation is an important element and necessary for the thematic vision. The physicality of audience movement represents human migration patterns with a subtle indication of Roman Catholic ceremony and colonialism. The visible design patterns of the holes in each of the 4 shrouds was borrowed from a crochet textile made by my grandmother, Antonietta Aloy Mercadante. Her crocheted piece was incorporated to symbolize heritage and immigration. My grandmother was an amazing artisan, sewing, knitting, and crocheting the most beautiful objects. I think of the heirloom as an artifact or more like a relic, as textile work is engaged in the life of the maker in ways unlike other art forms. It lies across one's lap and in the maker's hands, and the maker's hands are immersed in the material for long periods. Got a little emotional there. I'll try to explain how these shrouds were made. Please ask me if this is not clear. So I use an overhead projector to produce the design pattern of the holes in the shrouds. I lay the crochet work over the flat surface of an overhead projector, which casts the design onto the muslin cloth. The graphic design of my grandmother's crochet pattern is so beautiful and is a work of art in itself. I then select and trace out a pattern of organic shapes from the crochet design. These organic shapes that you see are the in-between spaces, the holes, of the negative shapes of the crochet pattern. The shapes create a new pattern cast in light, manifested through the absence of what is or was or once was. The absence of what is or once was. I think it articulates how I feel, an underlying sense of longing, loss, or emptiness in being an American Italian. Each cut hole is cared for by the embroidery stitch called the blanket stitch, which inherently signifies care and safety. There is something poetic about that, about caring for the holes. Holes become shapes in light, representing departed loved ones, ancestors we've never known, or how we might feel as orphaned. The crystallized branches are made from segmented tree limbs that are connected into disparate entities. The cut branches are intended to represent the melting pot of America, as most of us are limbs without deep roots here. We are fragmented and made of many different cultures and descendants of many countries. The limbs are embellished with crystal beads. The crystal beading reflects light, as well as reimagined objects that I remember from childhood. Crystal beaded fruit shapes made by my Italian grandfather, Luke Mercadante. For me, making these pieces felt like marking time. Stitching each hole was meditative, slow, and peaceful work, and making the beaded branches felt ritualistic and restorative. The cascading light and sparkly glass beads add beauty and wonder to the work, which for me is always necessary. I hope the installation offers the audience a liminal and expanding experience amid tangible materials, memory, light, teetering between real and imagined realms. Thank you. So did that make sense about how I made this design pattern? Okay. It's very complicated.
The thing I find most fascinating about this piece is you have 3 different levels to it. This piece of history here that touches on so much, and the structures inside, but what it's really creating is an atmosphere beyond this that I find really moving. I find it quite chapel-like in a way. I grew up Roman Catholic. There's this feeling of it, a room of solitude, the perforations creating these light spots. It's a more magical space than the outside. I find that the intriguing part for me.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Yeah, so when you're born Italian, you're born Roman Catholic. It's just the way it is. So I'm not a practicing Catholic, but of course my grandmother went to church every day at 7 a.m. and was once mugged and took the guy out with her handbag, so they're dedicated folks. And there's something about the whole pageantry that is beautiful, And so, so thinking about this and this threshold, and when you're standing behind here, I couldn't help but think of being in a confessional, and the light, for me, it's like, this magical sort of anointment when you're in there. Yeah.
One is, I didn't see the wall label for this, but how important would you think it is that we understand that that is the crochet negative space? Or do you feel like it needs to be stand on its own? Because I didn't realize that until halfway through. I thought it was very powerful, but that adds a whole layer of meaning. But how important do you think it is that the viewer needs to know something?
I don't think it's that important. It's important to me, but, and I think it's a story that's worth telling, and, I like that narrative. But if someone were to come in, I don't think it's that important for the viewer to experience this.
And then also on the what's cut and what's drawn, did you work that out ahead of time, or does that develop as you go, that you make those decisions?
Oh, so I made the decisions at that time. So,
When you were working on it?
yeah, so when I projected and then was tracing the shapes. Yeah, it was just sort of random, sporadic shapes that I traced. The original idea was to cut all the holes, and then I was like, there's not enough time to do that. So the original panel that I made before these was smaller, and that one, all the holes were cut.
Did that end up being an aesthetic choice that you felt worked better? And if you had more time, do you feel like you wanted to cut smaller, or do you like that? Because I like having them drawn in.
Yeah, I like the vine charcoal drawing showing. So I'm happy with the way they turned out. And I like I'm trying to use materials that sort of are earth friendly. I mean, everything I'm using is just going to fade away at some point. So I try to think about those things when I make work today. Hi.
So I was intrigued by the color, the red color on the sticks, and thought it was really powerful because it's blood-like, and it is such a contrast to the white, the pure white. And I wondered whether that had some particular meaning for you to use that color, and the decision not to leave the natural.
Yeah, so, I really wanted to, pink is the thing. I had an exhibition last year up in Johnson at the college up there, whatever it's called now. And it was about my mother, and so that one was called The Color of the Sky is Pink. So there was a pink thread throughout the whole exhibition. So pink has been something so I am afraid of color, and so that exhibition made me confront pink, which I have never liked, and so that's just hanging on from the last idea. But I like it. It worked well, and then those crystal beads I thought just were really beautiful on that pink, so I got lucky. So. Yeah, so, like I was mentioning, the materials are really important to me, so I like to make sure I'm using a variety of materials in each thing I do, just to change it up. And I use branches. I tend to use branches in things. Sometimes I the last show, I had covered them in emergency blanket and like shrink wrapped them in emergency blanket, so they were like silver and they were like so cool.
Why branches?
You know, I think it just, I like the metaphor, the meaning of the branch, and like, you know, I was talking about like the idea that we're all like branches and we don't have any like real root here, unless you're a native, an indigenous person, which I am not, but my ex-husband is. But yeah, I don't know. And they're just so beautiful, and they do interesting things. So, yeah.
You showed me some photos earlier of your sculptures.
Yeah.
Wood, sticks, and things, and they remind me of edifices. This is kind of like that too, and there's an architecture to this that's very satisfying. There's a space within and these structures outside. So you obviously have this sort of attraction to architecture and art.
Yeah.
Is that historical? Is it
I'm not sure. I do like to make things that are, you know, have the structures, architecture, and a nod to that. And I don't know, I think it's like a childhood thing. I like the idea of things like a fort. So, you know, when I was a kid, I was always building forts. And that's where those towers came out of the fort idea. So, I don't know, I just think it's fun. And when I have an opportunity like this, it's like such a delight to actually have the space, you know, like when I saw these ceilings, I just like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to make really long banners. This is a cool opportunity. Thank you. Thank you.